Grapple Arts Radio. Hey everybody, Stephan Kesting from GrappleArts.com here. Today I'm interviewing Keenan Cornelius. And if you don't know who Keenan Cornelius is, you really should. He's a prodigy. There's just no other way to describe him. He's achieved the very first Grand Slam in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's double gold medaled at the 4 biggest tournaments in the world at brown belt level. He's just destroyed people, and his skills are just off the hook. So I'm super glad to be talking with him today. Keenan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Could you just get us started by telling us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up, and how did you get started in grappling, and who have you trained with?
I grew up in Hawaii, actually. I was born in Kona, Hawaii, and I lived in Hilo, which is actually where BJJ Penn is from, for 7 years. And then I moved all around throughout the mainland, the United States, living in California, Nevada, and Florida. I didn't really get into jiu-jitsu until I was 14. It was 8th grade summer, so I was about 14 and a half. And I trained Taekwondo up until that point. My dad, Tom Kalos, he's my stepdad, but he raised me pretty much, and he's a 6th degree in Taekwondo, and he's owned multiple martial arts schools throughout the time I've known him. And so, but he was also a blue belt from when my mother first met him, a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. But I never really trained jiu-jitsu with him at any point until I was about 14, and I got into it. And he's actually the guy who introduced BJ Penn to jiu-jitsu back
really?
back when BJ Penn first started. He actually started training at my dad's Taekwondo school, not as a class, but more as just a workout for my dad himself. He's just trying to find people that he could train with and do jiu-jitsu, because, I mean, you know how the jiu-jitsu bug is. Once you start doing it, you just got to keep rolling, you know. So he introduced.
So who's more flexible, you or BJ Penn?
I don't know. We'd have to have like a flex off or something. we both at one point could throw our legs behind our heads without using our hands. So I don't know how you try and see who's more flexible after that point. You know, it's like that's pretty much max flexibility at that point. I don't know. But so yeah, I started training with my dad. We just trained out of our garage. We had some mats in there in California, and I just recruited some local wrestlers from my high school and who are MMA fans, and we all sort of started learning off YouTube and just picking up where we could. And I trained like that for about 2 years, with like occasional trips to like more legit gyms like Casio Vernek's gym in Sacramento. And I eventually got my green belt from Carlos Valenche after about a year, and after winning some white belt competitions. And then I decided I at that point that I wanted to do jiu-jitsu for the rest of my life. And I was 16 at the time when I decided to take my GED, which I understand you're from Canada, right?
I am, yes. But a lot of my listenership is from all over the world, and tons of Americans. So you got to explain to everybody.
All right. A GED is a General Equivalency Diploma, which is like basically a high school diploma for the kids who mess up, you know, the kids who aren't really going to graduate, or they don't have the grades to actually get their real diploma, so they just go and take a test to show that they're functional human beings. I chose to do that just because it was a way to get out of high school so I could train full time. So I took my GED when I was 16. So technically I dropped out of high school to train full time, and I moved to Hawaii to train with BJ Penn, because my dad had that connection with him, and he was always an idol of mine. And so I was in Hawaii for 3 years until I was about 18 and a half. So from 16 to like the late months of my being 18 years old. And then that's when I moved to Maryland, because I was looking for a more competition focused environment, like jiu-jitsu competition. Whereas in Hawaii, it was more MMA focused, and it was a little laid back as far as the actual jiu-jitsu instruction there. And I was at Team Lloyd Irvin for 2 years, almost exactly. I got there on January 27th, 2011, and then I left, I think February-ish of 2013.
While you were there, what was that like as a training environment?
It was awesome. You know, one thing Lloyd Irvin did really well was facilitate an environment for people who just, you know, wanted to train full time. We had a great facility. There are great training partners there. Everyone is very passionate about jiu-jitsu, and we had the opportunity to train full time and not have to worry about too much. He had a firehouse that he would let us all stay in rent free, and we just trained full time and trained with guys like JT Torres and Jimmy Harbison and DJ, and they're all killers, and they're all very passionate. And it was kind of like a sandbox type format. Like there wasn't too much like it's not your conventional teaching environment where we all show up, we warm up, we learn 2 or 3 techniques, and then we roll for a little bit and leave. It's like we show up, we drill for an hour of whatever we want, with Lloyd Irvin like supervising from the sidelines, and then we just roll forever, just like hours. Lots of like actual time spent training hard, like full on sparring. And I feel like that kind of environment isn't for everyone, because some people need more instruction than others, where we were all very passionate about it. We studied intently just on YouTube and watching the best guys, and all kind of learned from each other. And we really opened our minds to like be creative about our own style. And that's why everyone from there has developed sort of a different style. Like I was more of a flexible guard player. I sort of went towards the Berimbolo route, and like the leg drag type, Leandro Lowe's type passing, and then JT was more of a pressure passer. DJ obviously take down, pass, and everyone sort of developed a different game. Whereas in a conventional environment, everyone sort of just picks up what their instructor teaches, like the Marcelo Garcia guys. Like everyone plays Marcelo's game basically, and I think it's important to have that sort of freedom to grow in your own way. And obviously, Lord Irvin taught us a lot of stuff, but it wasn't in the conventional sense. It was more competition mindset, giving us moves that he thought would work for our body type. And it was really a great experience as far as the training.
Okay, well then the elephant in the room when we're talking about this is, why did you leave?
Well, personally, Lord Irvin never did me wrong. He never screwed me over anyways. He really facilitated my dream, which was to train full time. And so, but obviously the unsavory stuff came to light that none of us had really known about. And I mean, I think it's pretty obvious why we all left. And we all left, like most of the competition team. DJ's still over there, which we found out was for another obvious reason that he stayed. But you know what? Overall, I really enjoyed my time there. I hadn't experienced anything bad up until that point. And, sometimes all good things must come to an end. And like you said, it's an elephant in the room. There was an elephant in the closet over there, and, eventually burst out. And so once that came to light, we all had to do what was right.
So you're at Atos now, correct?
Yes, I trained with Andre Galval at Atos, and it's awesome over there.
And what's the training environment there compared to the training environment that you had? Are there major differences in how you structure your day and who?
Yeah, it is a little different. In Maryland, we would train like 2 really hard training sessions per day, with one smaller, just lighter drilling session in the middle of the day. So it'd be like a 11 o'clock session, 11 to like 1 or 1:30 or 2. And then we'd come back at 8:30 and then train to like, 10:30 or 11 or 11:30, depending on the night. And so we had a lot of time in between to rest between those 2 big training sessions, where at Atos, it's a little more packed together. It's 3 training sessions in the span of like 6 hours. So there's not a whole lot of rest time. And it kind of wears down your body. I guess I'm just not used to that different style yet, but it's different, but it's not bad. It's just a different way of doing it. Obviously, it works when you have guys like Andre Galval coming out of there, and the other killers from the Atos gym like Michael Lara and Mike Carbolito and those guys. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm just keeping an open mind, and I really enjoy the different type of instruction as well. Because Andre Galval, he's on the mats every day, like training full time with the rest of his competition team. Like he's there. Like when we all have to be there at 9 a.m. to do the first training session, he's there with us warming up, and that's a really powerful thing to have someone so high level on the mats with you all the time. To beat you up and really
keeps you honest.
Yeah, exactly.
So now, when you say you training, and you said drilling earlier, what do you mean by drilling? Do you mean repeating a technique over and over and over, or do you mean drilling specific techniques, or drilling specific positions, like you'll start in side mount and the person will try and get out, or what do you mean by drilling?
Drilling is it encompasses all those things. I think there's different types of drills. You've got your repetitive drills, like doing a small motion over and over again, like drilling like a leg drag for something, and you just do it as quickly as possible. Like usually we do it to like a timed setting, like where it's 2 minutes on, 30 seconds off. So it's intensive cardio wise, and then you'll switch to another type of pass, whether it's like Toriano, back and forth or whatever. And then you've got your drilling, which is like, drilling your sweeps. You just drill the technique without intensity, just doing it, going through it over and over again, trying to get reps in on it. And then you've got, like you said, the positional drilling, where you're starting from a position like, say, from the back, and you have a goal, which is to not lose the back, and then to finish your opponent. So I mean, I don't know if anyone has the secret recipe for how much of each type of drilling you need to fit in, as far as to maximize your learning and your understanding of those moves. But I personally like the chill type of drilling. Drilling is never really something I've really enjoyed. I just like I like live rolling. I like the sparring aspect. I think that's the most fun. That's what keeps me passionate about jiu-jitsu, just to see myself improving there. But I understand drilling is important, so I do it. But I'm not going to say it's my favorite part of the day.
So when you are working on techniques these days, as opposed to live rolling, and we'll get to live rolling in a second, how much of it is new stuff that you want to incorporate into your game, and how much of it is reinforcing stuff that you already have that you're trying to get to work even better for yourself?
Yeah. I was actually talking about this earlier with someone, and I feel like I personally like to incorporate as much new stuff as possible. I think it's easy to get stuck in a rut where you think you're a certain type of jiu-jitsu player. Like your sweep is an X guard sweep, and you play half guard, and then you pass over under, and that's what you do, and you just do it over and over and over again. I think that's what's so beautiful about jiu-jitsu, is how infinite it is, and I think it'd be silly to not try and add as much as possible. So I like to add new things, and I especially like to create new things and like come up with things that I feel that I've never seen before, and experiment with the positions. And that's actually a lot of what I'm teaching on my DD series, is a lot of the moves that I've sort of come up with or have seen and adapted to fit for me and work for me. And so that's why I say I like the chill type of drilling, because it allows me the time to actually like experiment with positions and try new things and come up with different sweeps and come up with different concepts that I can add.
So clearly, if you're doing that, you pretty much need to be drilling with people roughly your own level, or not too far below you, so you're dealing with reactions that are what you're going to run into.
One of my favorite drilling partners is Jordan Schultz. Me and Jordan, we have some really productive drilling sessions together where he's very open to the idea of me like trying new things, where some of the other guys are a little more resistant to that, and they just want to get their reps in on their one move, and they kind of don't like when I play around with the different positions and start playing with people's lapels and doing funky stuff. But me and Jordan, we can have a lot of fun drilling together. So, and he's obviously high level. He's a 2-time world champion. So of course, I'm really glad he's out at Atos with me now.
Now, when you get to the part of training that you really love the most, which is the sparring, how much gi versus no gi do you do? Obviously, it depends, I'm guessing, on what your next competition is.
Yeah, I pretty much do gi year round, except for the couple months before no gi worlds, and then I do pretty much pure no gi. So probably like 80 to 90% of the year I'm in the gi, and then the rest I'm training no gi. But actually, like, training in the gi is like training no gi with weighted clothing. So when you finally take the gi off, you just feel so fast and light, and it's no problem. It's a simpler version of jiu-jitsu, so it's easy to transition from the gi to no gi. So I actually found that sometimes I do better at no gi tournaments when I train in the gi for them.
Just like Marcelo Garcia before he came onto the scene at his first Abu Dhabi. I've only been training gi.
Yeah, I think it's like, because there's so much more you can do in the gi as far as manipulating the grips, and having someone grab you and have such control over your legs and putting pressure down on you. It forces you to it becomes very mental.
But don't you become dependent on those gi grips?
Oh, not at all. No, I mean, I guess if you let it can affect you, but it's a lot harder for a no-gi guy to start training the gi than a gi guy to go no-gi, because the concepts are still the same. Like, you're still playing guard, you're still not trying to not let someone pass. I feel like no-gi becomes a little bit more about athleticism and speed, and gi is a little bit more about actual technique. So there's some no-gi guys out there that don't want to hear that, but that's genuinely how I feel.
Okay. Well, it's your interview. You can
both extensively, and this is coming from a guy I used to only train no-gi. Like for the first 2 years I started, and for about a year at BJ Penn's, I wouldn't put on the gi. And then when I started forcing myself because I heard about guys like Marcelo who swear by training the gi, I started doing it, and that's when I really fell in love with the training in the gi.
Okay. Now, speaking of athleticism and explosiveness and strength, do you do any additional conditioning, either strength or cardio, in addition to all the training that you do, or do you find that the amount of training that you're doing, because you can train for 6 hours a day, is enough?
I feel like if you don't have the option for strength and conditioning, you should definitely be getting in as much jiu-jitsu as possible, and I think you can do fine with that. I actually did most of my purple belt year competitively without doing very much strength and conditioning at all. It was just there was a little bit of a conditioning class, but I wouldn't really go to it very often, and I was mostly just about rolling live. And especially at the lower belts, I wouldn't stress conditioning as much because conditioning is it's the complete opposite of skill in jiu-jitsu, right? Like we're trying to improve our strength and our speed, but if you don't have strength and speed, it forces you to use better technique.
Mm-hmm.
So especially when you're beginning stages of jiu-jitsu, I think it's mostly just you should just focus on the jiu-jitsu itself. It's a good workout. You're using all your muscles. You're not going to be getting super jacked, and like it's not strength training, of course, but it does force you to really focus on the technique. And when I was younger and starting, I was a lot skinnier and weaker, and it really helped me to, I'm forced to adapt to deal with the bigger, stronger guys. And that's part of the reason my guard got to where it is today, is just being in that situation. So if you're doing conditioning, it's really purely only for competition, in my opinion.
Do you do any additional stretching?
Oh, yeah. I do strength and conditioning now. Just to clarify, I do strength training mostly. I don't really like, I've done some like CrossFit type training. I've done some explosive training, but I feel there isn't a whole lot of explosion in jiu-jitsu unless you're standing. So I feel like just basic like meathead type lifting is actually really good for jiu-jitsu. So I try and stick to that. And I've had a lot of success with that. Like I feel really good when I'm like feeling strong like that. But that's not for everyone. I'm a lean guy, so when I put on muscle, it's not a lot, but it helps me a lot. So I see a big change. But if you're already a big guy, you should probably try and lean down a little even and do more flexibility type stuff and more cardio.
Well, how much flexibility type stuff or stretching do you do currently?
I actually hadn't really done any ever. I've never done yoga. I just did yoga for the first time.
I hate people like you.
But the thing is, like when I did yoga, I was actually very inflexible in it. Like I couldn't do most of the positions because my flexibility that I have is very limited. You see it a lot because my game puts me into the positions I'm flexible in, but like I can't touch my toes really. Like as far as hamstring flexibility, I'm very inflexible. Even like I'd say much less flexible than your average guy. Like I have below average flexibility in my hamstrings, but I have extreme flexibility in like my hips and like my foot to face flexibility. So yoga for me, it made me realize that my jiu-jitsu flexibility, like I use it already. So I think doing jiu-jitsu just keeps me flexible, whereas doing yoga, it's making me flexible for yoga, not for jiu-jitsu. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of yoga.
Sport specific.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going back to yoga.
How are you with all the training that you're doing with injuries? How often are you training while you're injured?
I have actually been really good about injuries lately, especially with the strength training. When I wasn't doing lifting as much, I felt like my joints weren't really supported because they're so flexible, and I had a lot of like tendon or ligament injuries in my knees, especially, and sometimes my back, like my spine, would get hurt. But once I started lifting and had a little bit more support from the muscles on those, like I haven't had very many injuries at all, and that's just because jiu-jitsu is pretty low impact for the most part. And when you reach a point, it becomes very flowing. When you have a good training partner and you're both people are equal level, there's not a whole lot of spazzing out people putting you in weird positions. You're comfortable in all the positions. You know the limits of your body, and you're not going to put yourself in a place where you're going to get injured. From what I've seen, most injuries that come to sports competitors aren't from training them itself. It's like from strength and conditioning, like CrossFit and stuff. So that's another one of the reasons I avoid that kind of explosive stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really interesting perspective. But you're saying that just what you call the meathead weightlifting, seems to protect your joints.
Yeah, that's how. I mean, I'm sure it's different for everyone. Everyone's bodies are different, but I feel like when I have a little bit more strength, well, for one, if it keeps me out of like getting stacked in bad positions, in awkward, uncomfortable positions. So just because I'm a little stronger, so that could be it, or it could be that my joints actually have more support. I don't know, but whatever it is, I haven't had a serious injury in months.
Okay.
Knock on wood.
Now, well, let's talk about the whole competition thing. I mean, clearly you're known for your amazing competitive record. How many competitions do you figure you've done?
Man, I was actually I've been flying around a lot lately. Going all over the country doing different things, and on my time on the plane, I've been trying to compile a list of all my matches I've ever had, and I couldn't do it. There were too many. I've competed a lot, and I don't think I even got through my first 2 years before I was like, man, this is too much. I can't remember them, or this just became tiring to write them all out. But I know in 2012 I had over 130 matches.
Wow.
At purple belt, and I lost once to a guy in Abu Dhabi. And at brown belt so far, fighting against brown belts, I'm undefeated. As far as facing other brown belts, I've lost to some black belts. Like at the Copa Podio, I fought to a draw and then lost to everyone else, and then I lost to Cyborg in Abu Dhabi trials. But so far at brown belt, I'm doing pretty well.
Okay, well, that's now with that amount of competitive experience, do you still get nervous before competitions? And did you ever get nervous?
Yeah, I used to. Well, the thing that I think helps people relate to my story, which is because I used to not be successful at all. I trained for five years before I actually medaled even at an IBJJF tournament. I lost first and second round at all these tournaments, and then I at a certain point something just clicked, and I started winning. I went from not winning to winning double gold at all these tournaments, and so I mean, I used to get very, very nervous, and after a certain point of competing, you just become more comfortable in your own skin, in those situations, in those environments, and you've been there before, and it got to a point where I was losing so much that I wasn't really worried about even winning, So I got very comfortable just there, just like, okay, well, here it goes. I'm going to try it again. And now that I'm winning a lot again, the nerves are kind of coming back, because it's like, oh man, now I have pressure on myself to win. And so it's kind of interesting. It's a fun experience. It's kind of weird, but being nervous is good. You got to challenge yourself. You got to put yourself in uncomfortable positions to see what you're really made of. And that's what I like.
Okay. Well, what do you think that breakthrough was? What do you think clicked inside you? I'm sure you've wondered about this a lot.
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot from people. And, I think honestly, everyone has it in them to reach their potential, right? It's just a matter of being in the right environment. So I feel like I was in the wrong environment in the sense that I just wasn't a fit in whatever gym I was in or wherever I was training, and the training partners just weren't doing it for me, or I don't know what exactly. But when I went to Team Lloyd Irvin and I was in that training environment where I really just got to focus 100% on jiu-jitsu and not worry about anything else, that's when I really started to break through. I think if you're going to be successful in anything that you really want to be successful in, something that is your life, you really have to focus 100% on it. And while I was in Maryland, I didn't do anything but jiu-jitsu. I would just train, I would go home, I would recover from the hard training and go to the next training. And that's pretty much all I would do. And I would compete and train, compete and train, compete and train. And it becomes a point where it just sort of absorbs your life. And when you're putting that much time and effort into something, you're going to die, or you're going to get better. Yeah, eventually you're going to get better. And I improved really quickly while I was out there because I went from losing to winning at purple belt, and I'm still on a rise right now. I haven't hit a plateau in a long time, and that's really part of the thing that keeps me very motivated. Is I see myself improving every day, and so I'm sticking with my training style, my training mindset of just training really, really hard and trying to keep myself on the mats for as much as possible without burning myself out, because burnouts happen a lot, especially with jiu-jitsu competitors I've seen. So
how much time off would you take? Would there be weeks when you wouldn't train, or days that you wouldn't train?
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, what would happen back when I was getting injured more is I'd train hard, and right when I'd start to feel like I was getting burnt out, I would get injured. I don't know if the injury was a consequence of feeling tired and burnt out with training, but it was kind of convenient. I was like, oh, well, I was getting burnt out anyway, so I can recover with this injury for a while and get my passion back for this. And but now that I haven't really been getting injured as much, I just haven't really been getting burnt out. I just genuinely enjoy the hard training. I like the feeling of pushing hard. I like the burn in my lungs when I'm training hard. I like the feeling of improving, and I like the feeling of getting stronger and faster. And that's a huge thing as far as getting burnt out. But if I genuinely don't want to train, I'm not going to. That's just who I am.
When's the last time that you didn't train?
You in the past 6 months, it's only been when I'm sick or I have to do something, or like if I have to teach a seminar or go to a competition. A lot of times, like, competitions are actually my reprieve from training because I have to travel somewhere and I don't get to train for a few days. So those days are the days I don't train.
So that's your taper then?
Pretty much, yeah. Because you can take a few days off before competition. You come into the competition feeling really fresh and good, and then it takes a day or two to get back to into your schedule and the swing of things. So okay. That's a nice little break right there. Competitions are fun. You got to enjoy them. If you're not enjoying them, you probably shouldn't be doing them. So that's my vacation. The training is what's hard.
Now, when you go into a competition, do you have a game plan for each opponent, or do you just see what they do and then react to that? Do you so how much reacting versus thinking are you doing?
As far as when I'm in the match, it's mostly just reaction. I think it's important not to overthink things. Like, you're going to do what you're going to do, whether you think about it or you don't. And I think if you start thinking about it and you think about what you're going to do, and then something happens to where you can't follow your game plan to the T, it can kind of fluster you and throw you off. Like, if your plan is to pull guard and sweep the guy, and next thing you know, you're smashed down in half guard and he's about to pass, like, that can throw you off a lot. So you kind of just got to take what they give you. As far as game plans go, if I've faced the guy before and I know he's tough, I'll try and stick to what I did last time to beat him. I'll stick to the same game plan. I'm not going to switch it up too much and take the chance. Like the Meow Brothers, for instance, I have a really, really solid game plan against them. It's worked for me every time, and so I'm going to stick to that. But for everyone else, I try and just push the pace. The best game plan is just to outwork your opponent. If you train harder than them and you're in better shape, then it's just a matter of time before they can't keep up with your pace. So being aggressive and pushing hard the whole match usually will lead you to victory.
So of all the matches that you finish with submission, what are your most effective submissions that you're using in competition? Have you worked that out sort of statistically, or do you have a sense of it?
I haven't really taken the time to figure it out, but off the top of my head, I finish a lot of Ezekiel chokes. I finish a lot of bow and arrow chokes from the back. I get a pretty varied submission results. It really just depends on what situation you're in. I like to have submissions from everywhere. So mostly, I wouldn't say which submission, but the submissions that happen in transition, I hit the most. Like if they're turning away pass, or if they're trying to pass and I see an opportunity to catch something, that's when I catch people, rather than the guys who pass, mount, and then they're going to get that cross choke. I'm more like, I take what I see. But I guess,
and that comes from pushing the pace, I guess, as well. What you were talking about earlier.
Try to keep a lot of movement. I don't like to a lot of times I give up a lot of points when I compete. People will score on me, but I'd rather have the match be moving than me score and then have to move slowly to try and make sure that I don't mess up and so they don't sweep me. So I'd rather just keep the pace as high as possible.
So are you counting points in your head for the first half of the match, or at any point in the match?
You always got to know where you're at point wise. That's a really important thing. One of the drills we did at Lloyd Irvin's, which is really beneficial, is like we were trained to keep track of the points always. So like if you score, like sometimes we'd have to say it out loud, like 2, or pretend to look up at the ref, make sure they get you your 2 points. That really helps a lot. So when it becomes a thing where you're always thinking about it in training and keeping track of the points in your head in training, it happens naturally in competition. So yeah, I always make sure I know where I'm at points wise.
Okay. When it comes to competing in the absolute division, what's your game plan there, fighting bigger, stronger guys?
Really, your game plan in jiu-jitsu, it should just be your A game, your best moves, the stuff you're comfortable with. So I would like to think I'm pretty versatile. I actually have like okay stand-up, like I have okay judo. Not a lot of people know that, but my guard is better, so I stick to pulling guard. So in the absolute, I'm going to pull guard, and then from there I'm going to sweep and then do whatever I can, stick to my strong moves like my berimbolo and my spider guard, and then try and look for people's backs to get the choke. But yeah, game planning really is, you just got to do what you're good at.
Okay.
Use your moves that you know you can hit and stick to that.
Now, you mentioned the berimbolo, and I've seen you do things like 50-50 guard.
Yeah.
What do you think about the argument of classic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus the modern Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in terms of both competition and in terms of self-defense?
If you're looking for self-defense, I can't think of a better position than to put someone in 50-50. Like, okay. If you're getting hit and you're getting beat up and you put someone in 50-50, they're not going to be able to hit you anymore.
And you can rip their knee off.
There's a time and place for everything. 50-50 and the double guard pull stuff, it's a part of the game now. Like, there are people out there that if I couldn't play that game with, like, I have it would be much harder to beat them. So it is a game, and if you don't like the game, don't play the game. So you got to take it all in stride. And those people who like to stick to classical jiu-jitsu and the traditional style, if you can live by the sword, but you're gonna get shot by those who don't. Mm-hmm. So it's all jiu-jitsu when it comes down to it. Like, that's like saying, you know what, I hate new technology, I'm going to stick to using Windows 98.
Right. Well,
there's new stuff comes out. That's just how it is.
To play the devil's advocate here, there's people who are saying, so long as there's double guard pulls going on, jiu-jitsu is never going to be an Olympic sport, and stuff like that. And you see competitions like Abu Dhabi trying to find ways around it to make it a little bit more spectator friendly. Do you think, if you were magically in charge of the IBJJF rules, what would you change to try and make it more spectator or maybe even television friendly, if that was your goal to grow the sport that way?
You know what? Jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. I think if we were to try and change it to make it more spectator friendly, bad things would come of that too. Like judo, for instance, like they eliminated a ton of stuff in judo, and it became totally warped to what it is today. And like a lot of people don't like that about judo. Like a lot of judo guys enjoy jiu-jitsu a lot more. Like I was just training with a guy, Travis Stevens, like 2 nights ago, who was a judo Olympian, and he says he trains judo to pay the bills, but his true love is jiu-jitsu. So I think what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu is it's not a spectator sport. It's for the competitors. It's for the people who train it. Like, if you train it, you're gonna enjoy watching it. There's boring matches and there's good matches, just like in anything. Like any sport, there's gonna be boring matches. There's gonna be barn burners, but not every match is gonna be exciting. Not every MMA fight is exciting. There's some super boring MMA fights, and then there's some really exciting ones, like Buchecha versus Rodolfo. That was an awesome match. Buchecha versus Galdao. Those matches are awesome, and then you have other matches that are really boring, but like people watch jiu-jitsu and they expect every match to be really exciting. That's just unrealistic, especially when it's a sport where amateurs are competing like in the public eye, like blue belts and purple belts and brown belts, and those guys aren't even the professionals. They're not even the pros. So like, how are you going to complain about what they do? They're the amateurs. Sorry, not everyone can be exciting, you know?
Well, you know what? I suppose the the cable television networks make bass fishing a spectator sport.
Exactly.
Somehow
Like,
they
I
make
was going to
that.
say, like, can you name some of the other really exciting sports in the Olympics? Like, well, there's some crazy sports in there that I wouldn't call exciting by any means, but there are people out there that enjoy them, and so they're in there. So
Race walking.
I think more than anything, it's just as jiu-jitsu grows and becomes more in the public eye, and people start to recognize it and know it as jiu-jitsu, which is happening. Like, it used to be, you could ask someone about jiu-jitsu and they wouldn't know what it is, but you could ask them about judo and they would kind of understand, like, oh yeah, I kind of know what judo is. Now it's kind of like the other way around, almost, where almost everyone knows about jiu-jitsu. You can walk up to anyone on the street and be like, hey, you know jiu-jitsu? And they'll be like, oh yeah, that's the stuff, the Gracies, the UFC, you know, yeah, I heard about that. So, I mean, as it grows, I don't think it's anything that actually would have to change in the sport as much as just time has to pass as it grows.
Well, you know the sport is spreading. When the other day I was in downtown Vancouver and I saw a couple of homeless guys fighting, and they were actually trying to apply a guillotine choke from the guard.
It's funny to say that. I've seen that too. I've seen hobos in Hawaii actually, like, trying to do arm bars on each other.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's kind of not. And a sheriff friend of mine was saying they had to change their pat down procedures because guys were starting to go for rolling knee bars. You know, when you're up against the wall with your hands on the wall being patted down. So they had to change. I'm not exactly sure what they changed,
Right.
but it really is penetrating into the public consciousness. It's an exciting time.
Yeah. So to all those people that are, complaining about double guard pull and stuff, they're just complaining to complain, Like, nothing's forcing you to watch those matches. Like you just don't watch it. If you know that's what's going to happen, don't watch the match. And a lot of times there can be some really cool stuff that happens from double guard pull. Like, I have 50-50 armbar from there. I just hit a 50-50 armbar from double guard pull, last weekend at the Pan Ams. So, there's still cool stuff happening. And
congratulations on your Pan Am performance, by the way.
Thank you. I'm not too happy with it. It was a little slow paced. I wasn't as explosive as I would have liked, and I didn't push the pace as much. So
why do you think that was? Was it nerves or a desire to screw up?
I was going through a lot at that point. Like, I had a lot of stuff going on, and I wasn't really in a good place mentally or physically. I wasn't really set into a good strength and conditioning program yet after the move, and I just wasn't feeling 100%. So some of my matches, I kind of went into competition mode, just to make sure I win, because I have a goal. I want a double gold Grand Slam again. So
yeah. Well, you've got quite the incredible highlight reel out there, so I guess you can be forgiven for not every match being a highlight reel performance.
I still got some cool moves, but there are a couple that were kind of like, but I got another 50-50 armbar on one of the Meow Brothers, so I was happy about that, because those guys are killers.
Yeah. You know what? I'll see about hitting you up after this conversation's over. I'll try and hit you up for a video of that 50-50 armbar. And
awesome.
And we'll throw it on the website, grapplarts.com. There, my marketing manager will be happy now. So now, as we're finishing up this conversation, it's kind of weird to ask you this, because you have been training so hard at a level that most normal people can't, right? Most normal people have a job, they've got kids, they're lucky to train 3 or 4 times a week, and they're also starting out. So what advice would you have? I'll break this into 2 questions. What advice would you have for somebody who's just starting out? It's their first week in jiu-jitsu, or the first month. How could you help them along?
It's kind of like starting anything. First month is going to be a little weird, that everything's going to be completely new and different. And at that point, I think you should just stick to what your instructor tells you, Try not to do too much on your own. Try not to go and find the fanciest techniques. That would be the biggest thing. Fight the urge to go and look up cool moves and try and do that. You got to build a base first before you start trying to build, a pyramid of your game. Like, if you I like to think of it like, your whole entire jiu-jitsu game is a pyramid, and the topmost peak of your pyramid is the fancy techniques and the cool moves and the cool submissions and the berimbolo stuff, and then towards the bottom is the basis of like understanding closed guard and how to hold mount, and just understanding what happens when two people roll with each other. And if you start trying to build a pyramid by throwing the top point of the pyramid on top first, and you start dropping those blocks, it's just going to be a big pile of rubbish in the end. So you got to start with those fundamentals and those foundations and build from there. And I went through that as well. Like when I started, I was looking for the cool moves, and my fundamentals suffered, through my first 5 years or so. Who knows? Maybe that's the reason I wasn't doing well. And then when I finally got my fundamentals down, I started doing better in competition.
Okay.
But I'd say that's the biggest thing as far as a beginner goes.
Now, what about somebody who's been into it for a couple of years, but again has can't devote a third as much time as you devote to jiu-jitsu? What advice would you have for them, especially if they want to compete a little bit, they want to get better, they want to eventually get their black belt, but it's going to take them, they know in advance, it's going to take them 10 years, 12 years to get there.
There's nothing wrong with that. Jiu-jitsu is a hobby for everyone, even the full-time competitors. Like, I do this because I enjoy it. You don't find anyone out there doing jiu-jitsu because they hate it, and competing. Like, it's not one of those things. And like, ultimately, it's just a game. There's nothing serious about it. Like, we're just a bunch of guys like who found a way to fight without anyone getting hurt, and that's fun, So we put on our big goofy gis, and we grab them, and we roll, basically just roughhouse for a couple hours every day. And there's a couple guys who take it more seriously. Like, I would compare us to like professional video game players. It's just a game, and we've spent a huge amount of time trying to get really good at a very unique and specific set of rules that make up our game. And so if you want to get good at a game, you got to put in the practice. And if you have other things in your life that take away from you putting the time to get really good at this really complex thing, it's going to take time, and that's not a big deal. As long as you enjoy the journey. It's not the destination, it's the journey. So
okay. Where do you see yourself with this whole jiu-jitsu thing in 5 to 10 years? Are you considering MMA, or do you want to teach seminars, or you want to open your own school eventually?
I would like to fight MMA just because I think that would be really cool. And I've actually trained some MMA before, and I enjoy it, and I think I have a knack for it. Just like I feel like I can do well with it. So eventually I'm going to, but I have really steep goals for myself in jiu-jitsu that I want to accomplish first. And other than that, like I just like the art of jiu-jitsu. I feel like I have it's something that came naturally to me when nothing else ever really did. So it has a special place in my heart. So who knows? I may just do jiu-jitsu for the rest of my life. And I don't think about it too much. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and whatever happens, happens. Who knows? I may end up opening a school. I may just teach seminars and just keep training. I don't know.
Okay.
Mostly, I really just want to, pursue mastery in my chosen art.
You're being here now. So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, on behalf of myself and the Grapple Arts readership and listenership, thank you so much for this interview. It's really cool, and you gave us some really good perspectives on what goes on inside the head of a competitor such as yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Take care.
You too.